You see a fourth person here on the set, Seth Zuckerman. He's a former prosecutor, current defense attorney, and a guy with some insight as to what the timeline is going to be here for the rest of the day. First of all, thanks for joining us.
Of course, Kirk.
All right, explain to us what we can look forward to.
Sure. So the defense made a bail application at the conclusion of the jury's reading of the charges. So as everybody knows, and just to catch everyone up to speed, Combs was found not guilty of the first count, which was the RICO racketeering count, and found not guilty of both of the sex trafficking counts. He was only found guilty of the transportation for prostitution count, which is under the Mann Act. Those are the two most minor counts. He faces up to 10 years on each of those counts for a maximum of 20 years, but it's unlikely he's going to do that much time. So upon the jury exiting the courtroom, the defense made a motion for Combs to be released, to be on bail, and their bail application was $1 million bond with travel to New York, Florida, and LA. And then he would live at his home on Star Island. And the judge said, well, I'm not going to decide it at this very moment. I need papers, and asked both sides to submit letters by 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Hey, Seth, while you're explaining that, I just want to tell our audience what you're looking at. There was a big bus outside the courthouse. That is the bus the family just got on. And as you can see, there are lots of people, supporters, well-wishers, people who are just curious on the street, and a gaggle of press that are looking for some kind of, interview with.
We're yelling questions.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. We're shouting them out from that pit right there, because that's where they keep us, off to the side. So we're nowhere near the podium. We're there as they walk by us, and we have the mics out there asking anything you want to say, anything you want to say.
Okay, and that's the door again. But get back to 1 o'clock today.
Yeah. So 1 o'clock today, the judge asked for letters, and then they're going to reconvene. He didn't say a certain time. He wants each party to submit letters by 1 p.m. this afternoon, and then I assume sometime around 3 or 4 o'clock, the parties will reconvene in court, and the judge will make his determination as to bail. And it's at that point that I would expect the family and the lawyers to speak.
Seth, what is the probability of letting him out? You say that these are minor charges. Other people say these are still major charges to be,
They're not minor, they're the lesser of the five.
Right.
Yes, they still face up to 10 years on each of them.
Right. In most other cases, what would a judge do?
In most other cases where it's just a Mann Act transportation for prostitution, someone would be out on bail. It's very unlikely without the other charges that someone would be held in custody. Now, Combs is unique in that he's a flight risk. He's got his own plane. He's got hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So it's a unique situation that the judge has to consider. The judge did ask the prosecutor to submit any cases. I assume the prosecutors will be looking for that and submitting that by the 1 p.m. deadline today. But I do think bail would be appropriate at this point, now that he has only been convicted of the two most minor charges, and bail is usually set in these types of cases, obviously understanding that this is a unique person and he wants to live in Florida. There's some school of thought that maybe they should have proposed that he stay in New York. That may appease the judge a little bit more, find a place for him to stay in New York. But we'll see what happens by the time they submit the letters.
Usually when you're out on bail with that kind of thing, you're not allowed to socialize with the people that you have socialized with in the past.
Before you answer the question, I just have to say we're going to continue coverage on My 9, so if you want to stay there at 11 o'clock, just switch it over there if you're watching us on Fox 5.
All right, so we're going to go to My 9 right now? Do we have to run over there?
No, we don't have to do anything. We will just continue, but I want to let everybody know right now, because we're going to go back to regular programming.
We don't have to do anything. We're going to just continue talking.
We'll keep talking to Seth.
We can keep going.
You just get the remote and just put us on My 9.
There we go.
So easy. Okay, getting back. Are they going to limit who he's allowed to, if he's allowed out on bail? Limit who he's allowed to hang out with?
So every bail condition is unique, right? And so the judge has to make a determination as to what he's going to permit him to do if he sets him out on bail. Obviously, if he's living in Florida, he'd be with family. If he's traveling to California, he'd be allowed to socialize with certain individuals in California. So it really just depends on the bail situation.
So he can't have like a blowout party tonight, right?
I mean, he could go to a restaurant in New York City. If he gets released, he could go to a restaurant in New York City with his family and friends and celebrate. There would probably be nothing about the bail conditions. He may have a curfew that may be imposed, but there'd be nothing necessarily about the bail conditions that would stop him from going to celebrate with friends and family.
Let me ask you this. Would he have to wear any sort of home monitoring device or ankle bracelet? Where does that come into play here?
That's another thing that the judge can set as a condition of the bond. They've proposed $1 million bond. Sometimes pretrial services, as a condition of release, asks that you wear an ankle bracelet.
Right.
And that's certainly possible. That may be what the judge is thinking when he comes back this afternoon in terms of setting bail. He may ask for an ankle monitor in this case, and I think it would be reasonable.
And so, look, obviously the judge I won't say can do whatever he can do whatever he wants within the law. Are the possibilities, okay, you're asking for California, Florida, and New York. I'm going to let you out, but you can't leave the state of New York. Or you got to go to Florida and stay there, whatever. That he can limit him to one location.
Absolutely, and that happens all the time. That's why I said the judge may be only comfortable with letting him be in New York, and sometimes defense attorneys only propose that because they feel like that will appease the judge. Obviously, that's not the proposal that they put forth here, but the judge can make his own determination and say, look, I'm going to release you, but you have to stay in the confines of New York City and allow him to be in Manhattan only. So that's something that the judge can make when he makes his determination.
Well, Seth, we want to ask you this. You covered this. You were with Lisa Evers last night, and thank you for that, for helping supplant our coverage. Were you surprised at how this went? What was your own take on how this went? Share that with us.
So I'm not surprised. The RICO charge was always the most aggressive charge in this case, right? I think a lot of legal commentators, when that charge was first brought, were a little shocked that they brought that charge against him with this evidence. So I'm not surprised that the RICO charge was hung yesterday and then not guilty today. But what was telling yesterday is the fact that they had a verdict on those 4 charges and they didn't have a verdict on the RICO charge, which led me to believe, well, there must be a not guilty verdict in one of those charges, because otherwise, if you took those 2 charges together, they would have had 2 of the predicate acts that they needed for the RICO racketeering. So I'm not surprised that they reached a verdict on those counts quicker, because those are simpler counts to understand. I'm not surprised that they had it at the same time, and I'm not surprised that it was split. The problem with the sex trafficking count was always that consent is a defense. And Cassie and Jane both testified that they consented to this.
And it also said by fraud, coercion, or force, correct?
Correct. And all of that did not occur here, right? What you had here were women who later, after the fact, didn't like what they had participated in, but they had done so willingly and voluntarily and were in a relationship with him for numerous years. And so I always thought the sex trafficking charge, based on the consent defense, was also an uphill battle for the prosecution. So when I heard yesterday they were hung on the RICO racketeering and they had a verdict on these 4 counts, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was split because of the defense to the sex trafficking.
All right, we're getting a little bit more information from the courtroom, and it's going back to the beginning of the day, before the verdict was read. According to the Times, they said that Sean Combs walked out into the courtroom and said to his family, "We got this." He's then reading a printout of Psalm 11. When the first not guilty racketeering count was read, a family member gasped. As the not guilty verdicts for the sex trafficking counts came in, members of the family and his legal team began to cry. Even the legal team began to cry. When the full verdict had been read, Mr. Combs turned to his family and mouthed, "I'm going home."
We'll find out. The judge will determine that later on. Sounds like today. They have to be back in court at 1 o'clock.